More than 2 months into Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and for one specific group of people, it's like they're living through hell all over again. Holocaust survivors who escaped the terror of the Nazis in World War II, forced to flee once again 8 decades later, this time as Russian troops close in. Most of them in their 80s and 90s. The Holocaust survivors ending up across Europe, the U.S., even in Israel, and they say they never expected to experience that nightmare for a second in time, in one lifetime.
I have lived through 2 tragedies. I am twice a refugee. I was fleeing twice. I was fleeing from Hitler then. Now I have fled from Putin.
I'm an ordinary babushka that had already endured one war. Of course, I said to myself, oh my God, what a nightmare. Here we go again with the war, bombings, evacuation, leaving your home behind, not sure if you'll stay alive or not.
Just before the war, I talked with my brother over the phone. His name is Murat, and I said to him, there's something imminent. Something is approaching. Could it be that we'll be living through this once again in our life? They're not going to let us live the rest of our lives peacefully, and that's exactly what has happened.
And today is Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, where every year the entire country comes to a complete standstill for 2 minutes of silence in memory of the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. Sirens blare across the country to signify the remembrance, and people stop whatever they're doing, even pull over on highways to get out of their cars and stand in solemn silence in commemoration of the victims of Nazi brutality. Well, joining me now on this somber occasion, Holocaust survivor Ben Goldwater. Mr. Goldwater was born in Belgium and was just a child when World War II broke out. He and his family spent the war under constant fear of the Nazis, even hiding with his sister in an attic through the war before ultimately settling in Chicago in the late 1940s. Mr. Goldwater, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Well, we know we've seen at least 2 Ukrainian Holocaust survivors killed in this Russian invasion. Many more were forced to flee to neighboring countries, even Israel. Mr. Goldwater, did you ever believe that you would live to see Holocaust survivors forced from their homes for a second time?
Well, frankly, it's a very difficult task to see this happening again, but there is a major difference. While during the Holocaust, the Jews were the target of the Nazis for elimination, it seems that Putin does not discriminate. He's killing Ukrainians, whether they're Jews, whether they're Holocaust survivors or not, it doesn't matter. But to see this happening once again to those who were, let's say, fortunate enough to have survived the Holocaust, to once again being placed in jeopardy by Putin's war, is really very difficult to swallow.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the main emphasis of Holocaust Remembrance Day is never forget. But some recent data shows an alarming amount of young Americans know shockingly little about the Holocaust. For example, more than 60% of millennials and Gen Z do not know 6 million Jews were killed. What's your message to these younger generations?
I think the most important thing is to educate young people as to the history of the Holocaust and what occurred, namely the killing of 6 million Jews, of which perhaps 1.5 million were children, quite innocent, and to teach them that it's real, because there are very few of us survivors. I'm perhaps one of the last, because I was born in 1938, and there aren't too many people who were born prior to me that are still alive to tell the story. But by speaking to children at the museum, as I do, or speaking at schools or various groups, I tried to explain to them what occurred to me. I, of course, can't tell them the horrific stories of concentration camp survivors, because I was not in a concentration camp. I was one of the hidden children. The woman on the picture that you see there was the woman that hid us, and that's my father. As a matter of fact, there are 2 photographs. This one with my father taken in 1942 with a German soldier walking in the opposite direction. This woman, Josephine, and her daughter Denise had a violent argument. She wanted to turn us over to the Gestapo. Denise didn't. Denise won the argument, obviously, because I wouldn't be here talking to you if she had. This is the day after we were liberated by the United States GIs and a British armored unit. So living under the constant threat of dying, it's one thing that I can never understand how my mother and father could stand living every moment of every day, wondering whether or not their children would remain alive thereafter. But fortunately, my sister and I were able to survive the war, so did my parents. And we came to this great country of ours, the United States. A wonderful, wonderful country.
Absolutely. Holocaust survivor, Mr. Ben Goldwater, thank you so much for sharing part of your story with us today. We do appreciate it, and please take care.
I'm sorry there was a story to tell, but I'm glad I can do it. Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.